Good morning. My family always went to church. My mom and dad always went to church. Both my mom's family and my dad's family always went to church. My grandparents, they went to church. Not only did they go to church, but they were followers of Christ. So my dad was a believer, my mom was a believer. My grandpa and grandma were believers, and their grandpa and grandmas were believers. So I'm coming from a long history of believers, way, way, way back.
My mother followed the Lord and took us to church, but she didn't drive after a few years, and so then my dad brought us to church, but he didn't attend. But I was exposed to church enough that I was hearing the gospel regularly, and each time I would hear it, or most of the times when I would hear it, I would pray again to ask Christ into my heart, but I would always do it privately. And I noticed those around me had a joy and a peace that I didn't have, and I kept trying to figure out what was missing, and what did I have to do to get this salvation. And I thought, when I listened to pastors share, that the thing I was missing was telling somebody or walking forward. And so I told my Sunday school teacher the next week when I was in 8th grade, and that didn't do anything for me other than to make me feel more convicted. Now I'm lying about it. And I thought, well, I know what to do. I just need to believe God and do this thing, you know. And so I got on my knees that night and accepted Christ in my bedroom. And that was it. That was the real deal. And just to believe Him and to trust Him. And I wrote it down just in case doubt stepped in and made me wonder, but I never had to return to that because the peace and joy came. And the big deal for me before and after salvation was just the presence of God in my life and not feeling lonely. And living way out in the country like we did, I was just always feeling lonely, but the loneliness disappeared when I accepted Christ.
I was number 2 in the family. I had an older sister that was 18 months older than me. And during special services at our church, she came home one day and was asking my mom and my dad a lot of questions about salvation. And I was kind of listening in, but not paying too much attention. And she accepted the Lord that night under the direction of my mother. And then she became the little missionary. So she came over to me and she told me everything that she had done and convinced me that it was a good thing that I accept Christ. And so I did. I listened to her, and then I talked with my mom and dad. I was 5 years old, and I accepted Christ at that time and made a decision that that was what I wanted to do.
About a year after my salvation was when I felt led to join a large group in our church that were being baptized on Easter Sunday. So that was a very, very special time. And my brother and I were both baptized that Easter Sunday, and neighbors came, and it was just really a neat way to obey Christ and to let people know that I was a Christ follower.
I was baptized at Kent City Baptist Church when I was 10 years old, and I had matured enough in the Lord to understand what baptism was and that it was a necessary step in my life, and I made that step.
After baptism, God sent a family to our community that were like youth leaders in our church. And so they brought me to church even though we were way out in the country and 5 miles from church. That was pretty cool how He arranged all that. So I was pretty happy going to church each week and having that fellowship that I longed for. And so I was quite upset when I turned 15 when my parents announced to me one day, "Tell all your friends at school goodbye today because we're moving tomorrow to Muskegon." And I was very upset. I thought, I'm just enjoying this church and this youth group. I'm finally learning about how to follow Christ and what is going on. But God was up to something wonderful. And He brought me to Evanston Avenue Baptist Church, where my mom had gone like 25 years before. That very day, I met Jan and Jane, twins, and their parents were involved with the youth, and their Aunt Trudy Veltman was also one of the youth group leaders, so that's kind of a cool connection we have with this church. And so that church was very instrumental at that point in my life to teach me what it meant for Christ to be Lord of my life. He was my Savior, but I hadn't understood about having Him enter all the different areas of your life and turning each area over to Him for His Lordship. So I'm so thankful for that.
God directs in so many different ways. And when I was 12, I started working on a farm nearby. And as I was working on that farm, I noticed that there was a set of railroad tracks that came down through the farm. And I was up on a little bit of a hill watching, and the train had stopped. And so I walked down to see why the train had stopped, and it was because a car had gotten hit by the train, and there was a couple troopers that were handling that crash. And I made the decision at that time that I wanted to be a state trooper. And that was God's direction in my life very early on, and that led to so many opportunities to show how my life could be affected by what He wanted me to do. Opportunities to direct people and opportunities to tell people about Christ.
I'm so thankful as far as my being a part of Evanston and the Muskegon community, because I had no idea that a year after we moved there that my mom would pass away from cancer. So to have that loving community and ladies that were youth leaders to kind of mother me and to help me along through that hard time was very, very God-driven. So I'm just really thankful for that and for just God's orchestration of my whole life.
So as God led me to Muskegon to go to college there, I was very confused about what God wanted me to do marriage-wise, but I continued to follow Him, and He led me to this wonderful person. And so that's a whole nother story. If you got an hour or so, I'll share that sometime. But God's direction through your life every single day, it's amazing. Miracles happen every single day, and we just don't notice them sometimes, or we don't notice His direction in our lives. And He has given us wonderful direction along the way. It's easy to look at afterwards. You don't see it while it's happening, but you definitely see it afterwards.
One of the youth leaders had pulled me aside and said, "We're going to pray for your husband, that God will direct you at the right time to your husband." And when I was 19, God directed Barth to come and visit Evanston and see if there was a youth group there. And so that's how He brought us together. Just amazing timing and being in the right place, where God orchestrates all that.
God doesn't make life necessarily perfect and easy for you. As most of you know, we had a special needs daughter, and that was difficult. But He gives you the grace to make it through every day.
So when he was assigned to his first post, we went to Jackson, Michigan, and we raised our children there and went to Ganson Street Baptist Church. It was a very loving community and very encouraging. I think a lot of the things that helped me to grow were many opportunities to be in small groups, like ladies' Bible study, and we had something called Learn and Do, where we would have Bible study in the morning, enjoy lunch together, and then do crafts in the afternoon. And all the different ages mentoring each other was really amazing. And being a part of Moms in Prayer and BSF and different things at different times, but all different ways that God used to teach me who He was. We just rejoice in the Lord, and just this morning we came across Psalm 100 again, and so we just wanted to share it with you. Shout for joy to the Lord, all the earth. Worship the Lord with gladness. Come before Him with joyful songs.
Know that the Lord is God. It is He who has made us, and we are His. We are His people, the sheep of His pasture.
Enter His gates with thanksgiving and His courts with praise. Give thanks to Him and praise His name.
For the Lord is good, and His love endures forever. His faithfulness continues through all generations.